thank you all for coming out on such a beautiful evening. Welcome. So, I tell you, I've been meeting with folks all summer, and I get two sets of questions that we thought we'd cover before we got into the conversation. One is, are you for real? And those tend to be resume questions. And then there's a whole other set, it's about, are you crazy? And those tend to be, why do you want to do this job? So just quickly, let me just say that I have, actually, as Randy started this story, I came to Portland at age 24 with 2 small children, looking for a job. I was an unemployed mother and took a job at a place called Nature's. How many people here remember Nature's Fresh Northwest? Okay, we're all carbon dating ourselves, effectively. I worked my way up to Human Resources Director, helped grow that company, sat on the management team of that company, have done quite a bit of work building our regional food economy with farmers, fishers, and ranchers from around the region. Have then eventually ended up co-founding New Seasons Market with my wonderful husband Brian, who's here tonight, and 2 other families and 50 of our friends. In addition, I have served as an operations director for a software company in the 90s. I rode the .com boom up, helping to build a software team of folks that were extraordinarily successful, and those were the days when we were creating jobs that nobody even knew the names of. You're going to be the person that is like the database manager, and you're going to be the software engineer, and you're going to be the instructional designer that figures out how to put this all in digital form. We were creating jobs then, just as we need to continue to create jobs now. In addition, I have worked extensively on civic boards and commissions, most recently, notably on the Oregon Health Policy Board. In 2007, I was asked by Governor Kulingowski to sit on it was originally called the Oregon Health Fund Board, and to co-chair that organization. He said to us, figure out a way to make sure that every child in Oregon has access to health care. This is before federal reform. And it set off a whole fire among all sorts of constituencies, and we were able to make recommendations, bringing together insurance executives, hospital executives, activists, and patients to be able to actually pull a set of solutions together that now allows for all access to health care by all Oregon's children. And we have about 95% of them signed up. We've added around 96,000 children in the last short while. And so this is a landmark program for Oregon that we all should be very proud of. So that's a little bit about my resume. We also have 4 children. We live in they're all grown. We live in Mount Tabor and have been, and I'll just sum that resume part up by saying I have worked for 25 years on several Portland landmark nonprofits and for-profits. Nature's New Seasons Market. We can talk about all these. EcoTrust, Zenger Farm, Celilo Group Media. I chair the board of Celilo Group Media, which is the Chinook book for anybody who knows about green coupon guides. And in terms of why I'm doing this, or am I nuts, I come to this saying, hey you guys, we gotta get serious. Portland does not have a resilient economy. It is a nice place to live for a lot of people. It is a difficult place to make a living for a lot of people. Nice place to live, tough place to find a job. Many of the young people that come here, the new potential creative class, are passing through because they can't stay. We have a problem. We had that problem in our family, actually, when our daughter was looking for work here just a year ago. And I was reading the newspapers and kind of looking at some of the pet projects that the City Hall was dealing with at that time, and I said, you know what? This is enough. We have got to focus on the key priorities for this city while we still can. We have to focus on the economic benefits we can bring to the city and the job development we can do for the city. And we have to focus the city on one simple proposition, and that is the city's job is to provide cost-effective, efficient, friendly services, as well as leadership about how we can move this city forward. So I come to this very focused on the economic side. And the last piece I'd say about this is that I actually think that we have an obstacle in this town that we could get some conversations going about this, that there is a myth that's said in Portland that says you can't have a progressive set of values and a progressive lifestyle and have a vibrant economy. We have to break through that myth. And I bring a background in being able to work on values-based organizations that have to maintain an economic strength, whether a nonprofit or for-profit. So I'm looking forward to all the conversations. We can get into some details here. So thanks, Randy.
So we all know the business community has really been yearning for what it regards as a pro-business candidate. And part of any credibility that such a candidate needs is business experience. So I'd like you to talk about some specific instances, some actual decisions that you made in the various times of your business career. It would seem the most obvious examples would be Nature's Fresh Northwest and this high-tech company, which so far I cannot seem to find the name of anywhere, so we might start with that there. But just everyday experiences that might in some way give you the steel, the metal to run, say, a bureau.
Well, not that we can run a city like a business, but I think we can bring a business mindset to this city. So let's just take, currently, I'm the chair of the Saliva Media Company. It's a small publishing company. Some people may remember a Sustainable Industries Journal that used to be a part of that company. So just really some pretty basics. We set budgets, we review profit and loss statements, we are deal with the balance sheet, we're always looking at the cash flows, we're setting the personnel policies for the company. Actually, we're in the midst of putting in a digital program that relates to that publishing company. And so we've had to make a series of decisions around that, bring in investors, put together memorandums of understanding, and keep everybody on board. I facilitate a lot of meetings. In terms of decisions, I don't know if that kind of gets you some of the basics.
Me a sense of it. I guess tell me about a decision that kept you up late at night or woke you up in the middle of the morning.
There's so many. Well, let's just talk about the in the software world in the 90s.
Mm-hmm.
So it's
the name of this company again. Not that I'm expressing doubt. I just want to know the name of it.
As a matter of fact, there were so many names for this company that I actually told my staff this is a decision I made. We are not going to print one more business card. I don't know how many people, because we kept changing them.
Mm-hmm. What was the last business card?
So it was computers. So we started as Graphic Media, and some people may remember Graphic Media, which was a Portland company. The other companies along the line included Eagle River Interactive, Agency.com, Mastering Computers, Platinum Technologies, and Computer Associates, which at that point in time was the third largest software company in the world. This little company was bought by that company.
So these name changes came about through purchases?
Through mergers and acquisitions.
Okay.
That's exactly right. Yeah. And so we were.
Okay, go ahead.
I'll just tell you a little story about that. This is crazy, you guys. You may remember in this mid-90s, and I was extraordinarily excited about. I'm interested in the small genius that can then create growth, which is what I want to do with the city. I want to look for all the small geniuses that we can then bring to create growth. What was interesting about this company, about this particular moment in time, is there was this concept called multimedia. I said, wow, that's interesting, but what is that? There's this concept called a CD-ROM. For 60 cents, you could put a multimedia program on this thing called a CD-ROM, and we were doing training programs. We were training programs for network administrators, and we would launch these CDs. Every title was launched at a $12 million run rate which was extraordinary. So for 60 cents a piece, every time you got one, you were launching these $12 million run rates. So there was a lot of margin in these products. And so the companies that were purchasing the software development group that I was working with, I was managing, were very interested in the growth possibilities for this company.
Okay, so back to the 2 in the morning, and you're staring at the ceiling, your palms are sweating over this.
Well, you know, and I don't think people are in the high-tech world, but we used to say, if you're working 12-hour days, you're working half time. So there was no middle of the night. There was, you know, somewhere in the 24 hours you would get, what would be the crisis? The crisis would be that a database system would break down. We would lose data, and some system would stop working, and then you have to scramble to, you know, piece it together. In those days, we were still growing the capacity from on the technology infrastructure to be able to actually address them. How do you have backup systems? How do you create a stable system? How do you have enough space? How does the perform? I don't know if it matters to anybody here, but these are data management questions that have continued to grow. And in fact, I know there's, with all the work that OHSU is doing, for instance, right now, all the mapping work that they're doing, the opportunity to build a large database oriented project here in conjunction with Intel is very, very exciting. So it's one of the things that's piqued my interest, just simply from my database management background.
I'm still not getting quite.
What woke me up in the middle of the night?
Yeah.
I don't know, Brian. What woke us up in the middle of the night? Let's see. The freezers would go down at New Seasons Market. That wakes you up in the middle of the night with a phone call.
Right, but I'm talking about a decision.
A decision.
A decision you had to make.
Okay. Do we really want to put our life savings, our children's college tuition money, into a new business called New Seasons Market in 1999, when the common wisdom was that groceries were going to go online? This is the age of Webvan, and we were all saying we're never going to go to a grocery store again. We are actually going to all shop online and have our groceries delivered to our door. So to make the decision to take all the money that we've earned and put it into a company that was a bricks and mortar company was an extraordinary personal and difficult risk to take.
What about a decision in which the outcome wasn't so good? One you got wrong?
Well, I mean, I look at the world, we're all in a part of a learning organization. And so I expect things to go wrong. I expect mistakes to be made. I expect us to continue to learn from those mistakes.
Then your greatest learning experience.
My greatest learning experience. I have several people here I've worked with who could probably speak to that. Howard is over here in the corner from EcoTrust. Where did we screw up, Howard? I'm sorry, I'm having trouble answering that.
Okay. All right. Well, so I guess a question would be: have you ever negotiated with unions?
Have I ever directly negotiated with unions? No. I have had the opportunity to go speak to AFSCME, for instance, during this process, which I'm happy to talk about. Actually, let's just talk about the union question. So some people have said, is Eileen Brady anti-union? That's a question that's out there. And so part of what I have to tell you is I grew up in an Irish, Catholic, Democratic family north of Chicago. My parents ran Democratic congressional campaigns. I was a precinct captain by age 12. Anybody who knows something about that culture would know that probably there wasn't an anti-union person within miles of where I grew up. So just from terms of how I'm wired, that I'm a supporter of collective bargaining. I'm very much looking forward, as the human resource person in me is very much looking forward to working with the frontline employees. So I think that we underutilize the resources we have at the city in terms of all the employees and the human resources. I actually sat down with AFSCME recently and a group of folks, actually more than once, and have had a set of conversations with them. And I said, you know what, so you work at the 911 center, let's say. How do you get involved in the budgeting process or the priorities making process for your department during the year, at the beginning of the year? I said, well, we don't really do that. So one of the things I really would like to be able to do is to harness the potential that I actually think exists in the public employees currently that we haven't been able to harness, the wisdom in the group. I've never worked at a place where the employees are not the heroes. I'm not happy with how the public perception of the public servants, not just here, but around the country. And I think we have a real opportunity to create a very service-oriented city hall. One where the employees go the extra mile, and the public really appreciates that. I mean, imagine 5 years from now, we sit around and we say, God, I love those people at City Hall. I love working with them. It's fantastic. I can't wait to go see them again. They help me every single time. I think we can do that. And I'm actually looking forward to working with the employees at the city.
So, Portland Police Department and the Fire Bureau both have separate pension systems that allow for retirement after 20 years. So that we actually have quite a few 40, 45-year-old ex-police officers and firemen, fire people, fire workers, what do we call them these days? Firefighters. Thank you. I suddenly lost my proper noun there. Who are quite young, and this is becoming a burden on city coffers, and so it's potentially one area of renegotiation. One, is that something you would look at? Two, how would you go about renegotiating a pension system?
Okay, well, here's what I'd say is, number one, there are a few issues in the city that have, from my perspective, have been the elephants in the room. I don't know the answers to them, but anybody who's worked with me, for instance, on the Health Fund Board, knows that I'm not afraid. As a matter of fact, it's critical to me that we put the issues on the table. These are issues that are going to take a long time to resolve. My understanding about the pension system is it's about $3.2 billion over the next 28 years. That it's more of a pay-as-you-go system, and we don't have a program that really guarantees payment of that. I'm a believer that I think America was built on contracts, and we have to be able to, Marge, you're willing to jump in on here anytime you want. We have to be able to live with the contracts that are written, and so the issue is planning. A good management team, like a city council, can set a vision, set a goal, identify what the problem is, set the priorities and set the budget, and put a plan in place and execute it. So that's the type of thing I'm looking forward to. I'll just point out another issue that is, again, in my opinion, is an unfunded liability that the city is facing, is the Portland Harbor cleanup. We're going to be hearing more about that over the next year or so. And we have to be able to take this very seriously, and again, we have to plan for it. So there's some things that are big dollar items that we have to be able to take a look at. How do you renegotiate the pension system? I don't have the answer to that right now.
Is there anything in your previous background that you say would be sort of parallel to having to completely reset somebody's expectations of what they're worth or what their payback is?
So from a background perspective, I have a background in organizational development. So that's my training, and in conflict management, conflict resolution. So I have brought a number of parties to the table on many occasions that have varying stakeholder interests to come up with a solution that makes sense. And it might be a marketplace solution. It might be, again, we started by talking about farmers, fishers, and ranchers who are who want to bridge the urban-rural divide with urban consumers. There's an unusual set of stakeholders you have to bring to the table to cut a deal with. In healthcare, again, you have to bring interesting parties to the table. We talked about the insurance executives, the hospital executives, the activists, and the patients. Those, you have to be able to say, what is the common interest there? So I'll give you an example from a healthcare perspective, a recent health situation. So from a healthcare policy perspective, we had, many years ago, we had a very volatile conversation going on here in Oregon and in other states that basically went something like this. The activists the insurers were saying, we've got to have our business survive. And the activists were saying, the insurance executives are making $1 million each, and that's the main problem with this system. Through the set of listening exercises that myself and others did through this process, we really came to understand that the key issue facing everybody, and if we would all get on the same page, it was on cost. The cost of health insurance is very expensive, whether you're an individual or whether you're a hospital trying to pay for the service, trying to pay for what you're offering, or if you're an insurance company who's actually trying to make the bottom line work. And so through this process, we're able to say, okay, activists, if you want to actually make a difference in here, you have to understand that the revolution here, the radical proposition, is that we've got to bring the cost of healthcare down. And I am so proud of the activists in Oregon. They're they're extraordinarily well educated on all of their issues. And this session, they came to the table and they pounded the table harder than any of the business community did to bring the cost of health care down. That's the beginning of building a sense of shared interests, which to me is the guts of coming to an understanding in any type of conflict.
So what bureaus would you hold on to as mayor?
Well, let's start with, I would definitely hold on to the police department, and we can talk about public safety in a minute. I would definitely hold on to BDS and
Bureau of Development Services.
Bureau of Development Services. Thank you. Yes. I mean, I think there's some other basic ones, but let's talk about those two.
Okay, we'll start with Bureau of Development Services. This tends to be a little wonkier
conversation.
Here. Public safety, yeah, that'll get taken care of, but we're really interested in permitting.
This is a wonky crowd. So we have to be able to, the permitting system in Portland can be long, drawn out, expensive, and cumbersome. And I hear inappropriate in the back. I've heard lots of things about this process. What I really value is the job creation. We don't want to slow job creation in this city. We want to have friendly service. We want to have the Bureau of Development Services be there to help a business owner open its business. We don't need to change regulations, but we do need to be able to have a very service-oriented, how can I help you approach to this process. Right now we have a bureaucratic maze in this permitting system, and I'm happy to tell, everybody's got a story, and I'm happy to give one of our stories, which is there's many New Seasons market stories. I've been involved in opening New Seasons markets and nature stores before that with the city. And just a very quick story, which some people here have been involved with, is the store that we opened at 20th and Division in Southeast is a story. It's a great story about the best of Portland Bureau of Development Services and the worst of it. The best of the city and the worst of the city. It was on a parcel of land that was partially zoned neighborhood commercial, partially zoned residential. We were able to put this, we were allowed to put the store on the part zoned neighborhood commercial and keep the lot that was currently a parking lot in residential zoning. They would grandfather in the residential zoning as long as we kept it as a parking lot, no problem. But as it turns out, if you put a dumpster next to the building, it triggers a requirement from BDS to put a canopy on the building to cover the dumpster, which is next to the building, which then triggers a need to rezone the residential lot neighborhood commercial. So months and months later, and $240,000 later, we now have a store there with a dumpster and a canopy and a parking lot for $240,000. Unfortunately, New Seasons is it's a values-based company. It's a sustainably oriented company, and every time you open a store, it's 150 to 200 neighborhood jobs. This is a type of company that we want to be able to move through this process quickly. Same example, same store. Some neighbors came and along with some folks from BES and basically said to New Seasons folks, we'd like to do a stormwater management project, this is in 2005, in your parking lot. That would be a demonstration stormwater management project. And I know that some of the New Seasons people said, great idea, but it'll never happen. You'll never get it through permitting. But in fact, there were some all-stars from the city and the community who really stepped up to make that happen very, very quickly. So there was an example of the worst of city processes and the best of city processes. And we have some stars in the room right here. And we would say that I want to do more of the best and less of the worst. We can speed this process. How do we do that? It's more than a technology solution. One of the things we need to do is be able to actually consolidate the permitting process, which there have been movement to do that, but it's never been done. You need a certain amount of political courage to actually do it, so that we can have all the permitting, whether it's in BDS or parks or transportation, under one roof, so the problem solving all takes place in a single entity. In addition, it has to have a service of culture, a culture of service to move this thing through. So there's
a small problem with the codes. So exactly how would you go about reforming the codes in broad strokes in order to make it more service oriented?
I don't know.
Because for every one of those regulations, there's a constituency.
Yes. I don't know how many people here have actually been through this process, whether you're a neighbor or whether you're a neighborhood group or a business person, but undoubtedly, this is what I hear. I know a guy, or I know a gal, and it kind of goes like this. They usually use their hand strokes, inside City Hall. And if I call that gal, or if I call that guy, they'll help me move through these codes and understand what's going on more quickly. Or if I go at 9:30 on Friday to drop off my applications, they'll get through more quickly. Everybody needs to be the guy. So there's a set of problem solving, and I've heard this now from several city employees, that if you know the right steps, you can actually help people through more quickly. There are some, and some decisions that you can make that can move some of that code around or actually basically move through the steps more quickly.
I want to beam up to a more 30,000 foot level for a moment and ask you about charter reform, because there's been a steady cry at almost occasions, almost a march, toward the idea that we should have a different kind of city system, a different kind of political system. And I'm wondering if that's something that you imagine taking on, or do you feel like the current system is adequate enough to work?
Well, I think the citizens have spoken on this issue. Mm-hmm. So I think we're going to play the hand we got dealt, which is a commission form of government. And
you feel like all of the citizens have had an adequate voice in that?
Well, it's come up a number of times.
Uh-huh.
So there is clear opinions on all sides of this. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And the sort of one of the big issues that in this terms of just how representative is the representative democracy is the sort of rather pale complexion of city of the city council? And do you see any other path to a sort of greater diversification of City Hall, moreover, a greater political empowerment of the people we are not seeing in City Hall?
I'm not exactly sure what you're asking, but let me see if I can answer it a couple of different ways. One of the things I hear, I have been visiting a lot of neighborhood groups, many, over the summer, and want to continue to do that. One of the things that concerns me that I've heard a number of times is that an individual or a set of individuals will say to me, please listen to us, don't listen to our neighborhood association. And their neighborhood association is, and I haven't heard this in Linda's neighborhood, the neighborhood association doesn't represent me. But we want to be heard. And this might be an equity issue, or this might be an issue of just a group of folks not feeling that they're a part of a process. So I think that it's clear that, certainly as I campaign, I'm talking to a broader group than just the neighborhood associations. I think it may be time to take another look at the neighborhood association structure and see if there's some interesting things we can do. Can we add a technology piece to this puzzle? Should we be adding term limits to this puzzle? How do we create a more, a broader voice that can be heard by City Council? So there's a neighborhood piece for you.
Okay, how would you how would you imagine, or do you imagine that the neighborhood associations are a path towards greater entitlement of racial minorities within city governance?
Are the neighborhood associations a path to greater entitlement?
Well, my question was really about about racial diversity.
I don't think I have as much education as you.
And about political enfranchisement, because one of the strongest arguments for charter reform, is to actually regionalize the election of commissioners, because chances are we'd see a really different kind of city council if it were elected by regions of the city, correct? So if we do not do charter reform, is there a path? Do you see it as an urgent need, or do you see a path towards greater enfranchisement of racial minorities in the city?
We have to have better representation and better conversations for all parts of the city happening at City Hall, whether it's a geographic election-based system or it's a more formalized listening system to the communities. I can tell you something that maybe this is just validating your point, but the number, if we talk about East Portland, outer East Portland for just a moment, there's 150,000 people that live east of 82nd that live in Portland. It's the size of Salem or Eugene. 40% of our school children live east of 82nd. It's an extraordinarily diverse community. There's over 70 languages spoken at the David Douglas School, in the David Douglas school system. This is a truly underserved, neglected, underemployed part of our city that has to be part of, and it's part of my vision, it's part of the next 5 to 10 years has got to be to listen deeply to this community and to work to build almost a second city center in this area. There is a number of folks of a variety of backgrounds that I'm in the midst of conversations with. How do you systematically do it? One of the things I've actually been fairly impressed with the East Portland Action Plan process. There's a woman named Laura Wintergreen, I don't know if you know Laura, but she works with the city, and she acts as a community organizer would act. And she is bringing more traditionally disempowered voices into this conversation. Is it a systemic solution to bring in disempowered voices in? No, but it is one that is actually interesting and is working to some degree. So I'm excited and intrigued by that. And I'd love to be able to talk about some of the ideas that the East Portland Action Plan has raised at some point.
About the last decade, really, there's been a kind of shift in the, you might say, the identity of the PDC. and then a very dramatic change that happened with the Bureau of Planning. And I'm wondering if what your thoughts are about the changes in both of those agencies, and whether you see steering them in a different direction than they're going.
Okay, so you know that I'm an outsider to City Hall.
Right.
I'm not a career politician.
Right.
So I'm going to give you the outsider's view of this.
Okay, that's great.
So I take that with the background that I bring to it. When I look at PDC, I think PDC just can be an extraordinary, has been and can be an extraordinary engine for economic development for our city. We can't underestimate the power of having an economic development engine in the city. And there's so many good projects that have been dreamed up and delivered by PDC over the years. However, I think we're at a point where now that the mission of PDC is job development, we are now trying to use an old tool, urban renewal and TIF financing, in kind of I just think of it as a convoluted way to try and do job development. And I think it's not going to work. It's not going to work very effectively to do it like that. You have to be able to say that there's the core competency of what PDC has done, which is real estate development, particularly in underserved areas, has been done fairly well. And that's a core competency the agency has had. And we should continue to do that kind of work, particularly in places like East Portland, outer East Portland. That makes sense to do that. It does not necessarily make sense to use those same old tools that were real estate development tools to do job development tools. You can't do it as effectively. I do think there is a role for PDC to get very, very focused on developing the economic assets of our community. And I can give you some examples. So let's start with OHSU. How many people have seen the 30-year plan for OHSU, development plan? It's a very interesting plan. If the city had $10 million or $100 million to do economic development, they couldn't come up with a plan as strong as that is. In the past 2 years, OHSU has increased. I think they've added 1,100 jobs. They're the largest employer. They have 13,000 jobs in this city. They can drive economic development in this city and in this state if we help them, if the city becomes a strong partner with that project. They have an idea. I'm interested in small genius again that can then grow ideas and grow the jobs behind it. They are focused on the Knight Cancer Center is really working on leading edge science around personalized medicine, personalized treatments. They have built out a lot of their plans using that small genius to grow some of the other ideas that they want to grow. Portland, PDC, should have a strategic partner or partners working in PDC to help OHSU make some of the planning decisions they have to make in order to harness that vision and have it and make it happen. Again, less of an obstructionist type of perspective, more of a how can I help you transform this city in a way that makes sense. Same thing I would say from I think the working harbor has huge opportunities for growth. I think we could go back to Manufacturing 21 and some of the ideas behind that. I think we have an opportunity to build out the tech center in this city. And we have got to have some folks at PDC doing the real estate development piece, but there is a separate role that has to do with strategic economic vision and development and partnering with OHSU, the port, Intel, Greater Portland Inc., etc., to take it to the next level. So I would say that we need to clarify the mission here at PDC.
And do you see it still moving towards being the chief economic development engine of the city, or do you see it going back to being more of a land development?
I think it can do both, but you have got to be clear that it's doing both, and it's got 2 different tracks, and probably 2 different staffing models to make that happen.
Because I mean, certainly in the Bureau of Planning's former manifestation, you know, there was a bit of struggle as to who was really doing the strategic planning for the city, and that fairly promptly ended with the merging of it in the Office of Sustainability. You know, that piece really moved over to PDC. And you know, planning seems to be kind of a bit adrift these days. You maybe know less about it, but being a sustainability advocate, do you think that that was a good union?
You know what? I honestly have to say that I'm Susan. I've known Susan Anderson for a long time, and I'm having more further conversations with her as in the next couple of weeks, actually. So I probably should reserve judgment on that. I think that there's the Portland plan. We can talk about the Portland plan. Okay, so the Portland plan right now is in the Bureau of Planning and Sustainability, and not in PDC, right?
Is that where it is?
Well, that's approximately where it is, from where I can tell. I don't know. Should we take a vote? The Portland plan is a huge effort. Has generated a lot of input from citizens from around the city. It has 3 main focuses, and we're about to be looking at some of the detail as it comes through this fall. Building out a new economy for Portland, creating healthy neighborhoods, and having a strong education system. And there was a lot of analysis work that the Bureau of Planning and Sustainability is doing behind the scenes to ground that. I think that that's an appropriate role, whether that belongs in the Bureau of Planning and Sustainability. Right now, it seems to be the appropriate place for it, but I have to get in there and see how it looks beyond that. Are bioswales and stormwater management programs a good idea? Yes. Do they in the end end up as a cost-effective piece of our sewers program? Yes. Should we do them? Yeah, we should do that. This bike, you know, what do we do with our bike paths? Maybe we had a communication problem, maybe we didn't. The bike path issue probably should have been separated from a discussion item perspective. And we know that some transportation funds were used for that as well. So, let me see, your original question.
So
we have to be careful about we have to set our metrics for what are we trying to achieve from a cost perspective and from an environmental perspective. In this case, stormwater management perspective. We need to be able to put in programs that then can meet our objectives, and we need to measure the impact. So those are the types of, that's the orientation I have to these types of programs. So, and we have to be able to involve the public in these processes in a legitimate way.
So I guess the spectrum goes from a new home for the Rose Festival, which are fees paid for, to bioswales, and then somewhere in between maybe falls something like the purchase of Riverview Cemetery. And I'm curious how you draw those lines in terms of what is an appropriate expenditure of fees versus not.
Well, I'm actually a supporter of the Independent Utility Commission that both Dan Salzman is proposing and the Charter Review Group is actually proposing to tighten. I don't know if you know about this, that there's the Commissioner Salzman is proposing this IUC or UIC, I can't remember what it is, Independent Utility Commission, that will basically be a public ratepayers oversight vehicle that will then recommend to the council what the rates should be, and in doing so they have to look at what the expense side of the equation is in order to set those rates.
What is the difference between that and the Citizens Utility Board, what we had a number of years ago?
Maybe somebody here knows the answer to that question. I know what the difference between that one is and the Charter Review Commission proposal. I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
The Citizens Utility Board, which we had a number of years ago, which which Washington still has, and which has worked very well for them.
Let's not
I'll
get
tell
too
you what
off
the
the
charter
weeds there.
review group is planning to do, is what they would like is to be able to say that what this board recommends will stand, and they're trying to decide whether they need 4 council members or 5 council members to overturn it, so that it actually has more teeth than it's had in the past. So they have more accountability and more authority in this process. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I thought we actually already had that. We did years ago. I didn't know that it could be.
Well,
Steve, can you add in? Can you answer that question? Okay.
We can take that up in a deeper form later. So we talked a little bit about East Portland, and I'm curious about your sort of diagnosis of it. I mean, a lot of it has had to do with, and also curious whether you feel like in any way you were a contributor to East Portland. Because I mean, for instance, a lot of what East Portland is about is displacement, right? A huge number,
Currently,
particularly African American people, have been displaced from North Portland to East Portland. With Interstate Rail, $350 million, piece of infrastructure. New Seasons builds a store and transfers the housing, creates a covenant to transfer the housing that was required on that site to East Portland. What we've seen over time is, East Portland becoming kind of the, I don't know, sort of like the messy garage of Portland, in terms of a lot of affordable housing, stuffed out there, a lot of sort of halfway efforts to try to get projects going, like Gateway, to some extent Lentz. And I'm curious, what do you imagine is the first step that can be taken for this? For one, stemming the displacement that is furthering the social problems out there, but 2, where do we start there?
well, there's a lot in that question.
There is.
Okay, so there's a lot of pieces to that puzzle. So let me first say this is a picture of New Seasons Market Arbor Lodge store in North Portland.
Mm-hmm.
And we're looking at the light rail. This is actually a great photo.
We tried.
Yeah. This store was an abandoned grocery store, and it was at the time where this area was not very well developed. We were taking a good look at this site. There was an obstacle to siting a store there, and it didn't seem like an obvious obstacle to us, but the obstacle was that this was basically the overlay basically had I can't remember what the number was, but it had 100 and some odd residential units zoned for this particular lot. And there were neighbors that said, you know what, that wasn't supposed to be in the overlay. What was supposed to be there was a neighborhood commercial zoning, basically. I'm shortening the story, but that's essentially it. And at first the city and PDC said, no way, you can't do this here. We're just having residential along our MAX train. And we said, you gotta be kidding. Don't you want a commercial center to anchor a community? We value community. I value community. I want lots of centers of community in Portland. And so we actually had to go outside the PDC structure, not the structure, but the individuals, and make a trade with another piece of property so that we could have a no net housing loss overall in the city. And this ends up as a grocery store, and then another site ended up with more residential units.
Another site in East Portland.
Yeah, East Portland. Mm-hmm, that's exactly right. And it wasn't too. It's interesting what the implication is that we pushed housing to East Portland.
No, I'm just saying that.
I'm trying to understand what the implication is.
Well, part of the design, part of
Yeah.
the idea between the urban renewal area, for the urban renewal area around MAX was one, to pay for it, but two, to enhance density. I mean, that's supposedly, the idea of light rail is creating transit-oriented communities, right? So you want to put your affordable housing close to the transit stops. Here's a perfect example of a site that's directly adjacent to a transit stop. And the affordable housing suddenly went away. And where does it go? It goes to East Portland.
Well,
So
and that's one way of looking at it.
I mean, there's incrementally
Yeah.
a lot of that
Yeah.
that's gone on in North Portland. And so
Yeah.
I guess what I'm asking you is there a way that you can see that you can enhance a community without gentrifying it?
Okay, so let's leave the new seasons piece, but I'll tell you something that I actually have to say one more piece about this, which is that I believe you have to have community anchors, and one of the things that's actually missing in East Portland actually is a discernible set of centers that makes sense. And in this particular case, at this moment in time before this was all built out, there was not a great discernible community neighborhood center. And a grocery store can create a discernible center. And that was our goal here. And in fact, I would argue that this probably helped bring in some of the other retailers and other folks along this line.
Oh, there's no doubt that it's been an absolute, energizer to the neighborhood. But the thing is,
so now let's talk about East Portland.
Yeah.
So,
but no, let's talk about North Portland just for a moment.
Okay.
Do you see a means? Is there any way of thinking outside of the box that we have drawn to enhancing a neighborhood without gentrifying?
I do think that there's a whole set of things you can do, right? There's tax incentives for renters. There's tax incentives for property owners who provide rental units. We have got to take gentrification implications very, very seriously in this city, particularly in East Portland, because otherwise, you know what's going to happen? Everybody's going to then move to Gresham, right? So we've displaced some folks to East Portland, and now they're going to move further east, and that's not okay. We want a community, I want a community that's diverse and is really creates a sense of community that has multiple different kinds of folks coming to it. So what can you do? I think there's a whole bunch of things you can do from a tax perspective for property, landlords, and actual renters.
To this site, by the way. Correct?
All of which were available to this site?
Yeah, I mean originally that were available to this site.
You know, I'd have to go back and look. I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't know.
I mean it was. So there's also a matter of convincing property owners, correct?
Yes, you have to convince property owners. Absolutely, that's a part of it. So we have this no net loss housing program in this city that we absolutely have to maintain. We want to have dense housing, we want to have discernible centers, we want to have diversity, we want to have all sorts of great planning. We want to have some of the Jane Jacobs tools. We want to have short blocks and diversity and mixed use and what's the other one? There's 4 of them. Does anybody know what the 4 Jane Jacobs tenants are?
I'll leave it to you.
What are they? I'll think of it as we're talking about it. But yes, I think we want to bring all those elements to all parts of the city. That's exactly right.
Anyway. So, let's go on to a couple of specific topics, and we'll get some audience questions in here. The public market, yay or nay? Supporter or not?
Always have been.
Really?
I've been a supporter of the public. It's been a long process.
Mm-hmm.
And we're going to name it the Ron Paul Public Market.
I'm still curious what the
Mark my words.
Though. I'm still, I fail to understand exactly what the point of it is. What we will be able to get at this that we can't get at New Seasons any day of the week, and at the farmers markets during the season.
We're going to get a set. Again, we're talking about centers here. We're going to get a draw for the city. We're going to get a regional place of excitement. We're going to get a new set of rural vendors coming in to the city to participate and mix with the urban consumers. We're going to
the ones that aren't coming to the farmers market now.
You're going to get. There's all sorts of folks, right? You're going to get more farmers. You're going to get more. This will allow actually for more of the meat vendors, the fish vendors to have a place. Yes, absolutely.
And the PDC's economic study of this showed that will require steady subsidy in order to do that. And so you're a supporter of subsidizing?
I think we haven't quite figured out the revenue model for the entire project.
Okay. Let's see. The Oregon Center for Sustainability, yay or nay? Big vote coming up on
what?
Big vote coming up in just a couple of days.
This is a hard one. I mean, I love this project. It's an elegant project. It's a spectacular project and should be a centerpiece for Portland. If I had been involved in it earlier, I think I think there's a different revenue model and operating model for this project that I would like to have seen. I love this project, just like I love the EcoTrust building when it came in. To have a living building in Portland is an international landmark.
And how would you change the revenue model for it?
Well, we have to look at who the tenants are. Yeah, you have to be able to recruit the right tenants. So you have to be able to say, yeah, love the project.
But that's still sort of a vague thing in terms of what would
well, I'm not going to get a vote on it.
How would you change the tenant mix?
Let me give you an example. Let's go to other projects in Portland. One of the things that Portland has done, and that PDC actually has done very well, is again real estate development. We are a community of designers. There's probably some here. We are a community of visionary designers. Some of the pieces that I think we've lacked in terms of putting the puzzle together is actually inviting the entrepreneurs to help lead the project. So let's take Memorial Coliseum just for a second for an example. There is a project, whether you like it or not, it's an intriguing project out there, and I don't know who's seen it, but it might be an interesting thing to have them come in. Because Memorial Coliseum, actually one of the interesting things about the existing building is it has no posts in it, right? So there are certain type of operators that would be drawn to inhabit Memorial Coliseum. One of them is a group of folks who are out pitching a story about whether or not we should bring a sound stage, 3 sound stages, to Portland and film Hollywood quality films at Memorial Coliseum, to make that an international film stage. The story they tell me, I haven't done any due diligence on them, is that they have $80 million of capital to pour into this, to add to our film and video industry. They don't want one public dollar. They want the space. What is interesting to me about that, as an example, is that we have brought in, this is an operator who can lead a project. I think sometimes we have led our projects with a design goal and not with what's going to happen inside the building, top of mind. And I think we haven't merged our entrepreneurs and our design community well enough, and we have slowed and stalled and stopped development because of it. So this is just an example here where the driver, I would have liked to see the Living Building Challenge, one of the drivers in it be the anchor tenant, whatever that tenant happened to be, and to have them drive that and to help develop the revenue model and to prove the case that this is going to work. So
a different commercial tenant, you're saying?
Could be commercial tenant, it could be a private university tenant, it could be could be some interesting collaborative tenant of higher education mix of some kind. I mean, I don't know what the tenant is. I would have to go out, like a good economic development agency, you would go out looking for the tenant.
But the bottom line is you feel like there's maybe, if I'm reading between the lines of what you're saying, that there's a bit too much subsidy here.
I'd love for this to be a project that doesn't have public subsidy associated with it. I mean, I think most of us would on a lot of projects. I like this because then they prove that they work, that they're really going to work in real life.